Man, when I was younger, growing up as a basketball player, I was probably the biggest overthinker you would ever see on the court. I started to learn different ways around it, of course, and by this point, I don't really overthink that much, partially because I'm not actually officially hooping anymore, and I've dedicated my life to the psychology of basketball. But I've learned a bunch of different ways that would have completely shifted my career had I known these things 10 years ago. And having traveled to 30-something countries at this point and working with thousands of players, I've seen so many different players who overthink, and it makes it so difficult for all that skill that they develop in here when they're working out, when they're working their ass off, to actually show up in a game. And that's the last thing that I want to happen to you guys. All of you guys are dedicated hoopers. All of you guys are here watching this video and watching this channel for a reason. So I want to make sure that all the work that we put in is showing up in a game. And that's exactly what we'll cover in this video, where I'll help you get out of that overthinking mindset, give you a roadmap to developing your mentality in a game, and hopefully you can walk away from this video and get better and better at this, just like you would any other skill. Now, if you want a full roadmap for this, check out the Mental Skills Academy. It's a full 3-month program with meditation, psychological exercises, exclusive videos on how to build your mental tools, and a lot more. I'll put that link in the description. Let's get to it. Okay, so we'll cover 3 categories here. The first one is going to be a bit more about seeing the game differently and how you think about the actual tactical side of the game. And I get players asking me all the time, hey, how do I read my defender? Should I be pre-planning my movements or reacting? How should I go about this as I'm hooping? And this is an extremely deep question, and the truth of the matter is it's gonna vary for everyone. So I wanna help you guys kind of direct your attention to the right place on the court so it's not going into overthinking it. So first off, an easy hack here is just looking for space. Rather than looking at these little minute movements of your defender, just try to find where there's space on the court and then attack that or pass into it. Or maybe you're already in it, so shoot it. And we hear players all the time talking about getting to their spot, right? Now let me get to my spot. I'm really good at getting to my spot. And most of the time when high-level players say this, it's not because they're really good at shooting from the elbow or this exact spot on the court. It's more so that they mean within how a defender is playing them and how the defense is set up, them getting to a spot with space for them to create an opportunity and shoot the ball. And when we talk about pre-planning your moves and whatever you do on the court versus reacting to the defense, this is something that you can maybe pre-plan a bit more. As you catch the ball on a swing pass, you're looking for space past that initial defender and you're trying to get there. So like right here, he's probably coming off his ball screen, like, okay, let me get into this space. And it's funny because many times when you start looking past your initial defender, you actually start getting by them better. Why? Because you're not overthinking it. You're not looking at these little movements of your defender, trying to read their momentum. No, you're just monitoring other defenders, trying to get into space, and you're letting your instincts take over to get by that initial defender or get an advantage on it. Now, other times, of course, in a one-on-one situation, like KD here, for example, he is gonna be looking at his defender a bit for sure. But again, I doubt he's sitting there thinking consciously and trying to read that defender. I'd be willing to bet you he's just trying to set them up in some way and again, let those instincts take over. Because whatever you do, I don't want you to think about it too hard. Visualize it this way. We have a fast thinking brain and a slow thinking brain. The slow thinking brain is very valuable and it can do things like court mapping or seeing where everyone is on the floor. Maybe noticing this guy's momentum. Thinking about time and score, what do you need, a 2 or a 3, how much time is left, is the shot clock going down? All things that take a little bit more time to happen and that we can process up here a little bit slower. Now, the fast thinking brain is a little bit more instinctual. This is what makes us feel like, oh shoot, I didn't even think about doing that, I just did it. Quick reads like this off the dribble. Or adjusting in midair on a finish. And the key is that if you try to use that slow thinking brain to execute or plan these fast instinctual things where we have to let our fast thinking brain take over, that's where you start to overthink. If you start to go up for a finish and think about which hand to finish with and do that consciously. If you're in an end of a clock situation, you've got an ISO and you start thinking about, oh, should I counter, should I not counter? By the time that defender moves and that whole thing happens in a snap of a finger, that slow thinking brain hasn't even processed that yet. It's just too slow. And you can see this best when you're in the flow state. During your best performances, you're not thinking about your decisions. You're just letting your instinct take over. And we talk about the flow state in other videos. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy to just turn off this slow thinking brain. This is probably why you struggle with overthinking. But if you put your mind on other things, it's gonna help you divert your mind away from overthinking. So again, we talked about space. Maybe you try to find advantages on the floor. That's all you think about. How can I attack a closeout? How can I get some speed on my defender? How can I come off of a ball screen and again get into space? We talk about this in another video as well, but if you start thinking about these things rather than reading your defender, so to speak, it's gonna help a lot. And trust me, building these instincts that I continue to refer to, or this fast thinking brain, is part of what we'll talk about later. And then lastly on this topic, and this is huge, realize that nothing is the perfect decision. Basketball is not black or white, it's just a bunch of gray area, right? And in any given situation, you may be able to shoot, you may be able to drive left, drive right, pass the ball, step back into a shot, step forward into a shot, and potentially make all of these work. So none of those are the perfect decision. Plus, everyone's preferences, or what we call affordances, what they see first, are gonna be different. So in a situation where a defender goes under a ball screen, for example, a player who's really good at shooting may have shooting it as their first priority. A faster player may see this and attack this. A player who has better pace and creativity may ask for a rescreen and re-attack a ball screen. None of those are the right decision, and none of those are the wrong decision. In a world where we're so used to everything either being right or wrong, basketball isn't really about that, especially for these minute decisions. And I want you guys to know that, be empowered in whatever decision that you do make, and be confident in and get the most out of every single decision. It's gonna take the pressure off of you. And speaking about taking the pressure off of you, part 2 is about changing your perspective of the game. So getting the emotions out of it a bit. So this goes back to knowing the root cause behind your overthinking, right? Or why you're not performing the best mentally in a game. Is it because you're consciously trying to read your defender on everything like we just talked about? Or is it maybe because you have so much weight on you, so much pressure on you to make that perfect decision that we mentioned does not exist, that everything you do becomes that much tougher? And for a lot of us, this is a big part of it. And I think the biggest thing to understand here is that every decision that you make, not only is there not a perfect decision, but also it's not the end of the world whether it goes right or wrong. Again, most of this overthinking comes from the idea of, hey, if I make the wrong decision here, if I make the wrong read, if I do the wrong thing here, I'm coming out of the game, or I'm getting yelled at, or I'm gonna be mad at myself, whatever that negative is. You gotta flip that mindset. You have to understand that, number one, every great player even makes bad decisions, bad turnovers, bad missed shots, air balls, they have bad games. So you doing one thing wrong is not the end of the world. Even if you come out of the game, even if you get yelled at, of course it sucks, but it happens to the best of us, and it's about how you bounce back and make the most out of it. Plus, ironically, the more that you worry about these things and think about these things, the more they're gonna happen. So I need you to shift your perspective a bit. I need you to think more about what can go right. When you shoot a shot, I want you to shoot it like a game winner. Shoot it to make it, not to not miss it. When you try to go by a defender, don't go by them to not lose the ball or to not make the wrong decision. Go by them to get to the basket or to get into space. When you go into the game, don't try to not make a turnover. Try to make the biggest impact that you possibly can, even if it's not scoring. And understand that if you don't end up doing that, if it does go the wrong way, so be it, because you're controlling what you can control. You're letting your instincts take over, and that's about all you can do. So again, take the pressure off yourself to make the perfect decision, to do it every time, shoot every shot like a game winner, do everything to win, not to lose. And then the last thing I want to talk about is experience, right? Number 3 is just building those instincts that we talk about. So in working with a bunch of players, I see 3 different types of players in this sense. Number 1 is the type of player who's maybe not a natural, so they've worked their ass off to develop a super high level of skill. And in workouts, they look great, they feel great, but they just can't seem to get that to translate to a game because they don't have the feel down. The second type of player, or the opposite of that, is a player who just grew up maybe hooping a lot. They don't have the most technical, refined skill, but they have really good feel for the game. They make really good quick reads, they adjust and adapt quickly, they know how to read defenders very well. So that's all the way over here. Then you got players who have both of those, and these are the elite players. They're the ones who are super skilled, so they can get into a workout, maybe on air with no defense and look really good, but then they also have really good feel for the game. So when you put those together, you have a really, really, really good basketball player. Now, chances are if you're watching this, you're one of these guys or girls. You're probably getting pretty skilled, maybe in a workout or outside of the game environment, but you just don't have the feel to be able to trust those instincts yet. And what do we need if we're here? We need repetition. As much as I wish there was a cheat code, especially when I was younger, to just get in the gym by myself, which I love to do, and somehow magically get better in a 5-on-5 environment, that's just not the case. You need repetitions making decisions, because there's no other way you're gonna train that fast thinking brain. You need to be getting at least a few friends to go and do small-sided games with, or just 1v1 with. You need to try to find open runs. You need to try to find game experience, where again, you're gonna be able to execute these skills in the dynamics of an actual game. And it's gonna take some time. It's not a quick process. It's just like developing any other skill, and maybe even more difficult. But as you just hoop more, you're gonna see all these skills that maybe haven't been bridged from a workout to a game yet start to come a little bit more naturally. You're not gonna be thinking about what move you have to make because you're so used to making these quick decisions that it's second nature to do that. This is actually what happened to me after I stopped hooping technically. When I stopped my career in college, I was still a pretty big overthinker. And after that, I still worked out some. I would experiment. Obviously, I was training players, so I'll go to the gym and try things out. But for the most part, I was just hooping, going to different gyms, rec centers, playing 5v5, playing ones with a bunch of different players that I worked with, playing 21s. Pretty much everything was just live hoop. And through this, I became a significantly better player. All the skills that I couldn't execute in a game, but I worked my ass off on growing up, they started to become easy for me. I was surprising myself daily with my decision making. Fast forward 6-7 years later, and I'm 3 times as good as I'd ever been, even with barely working on my game. I've gotten offers to freaking play pro. I feel so much more confident on the court, and it's partially because, one, I don't have as much pressure on myself because I don't identify as a basketball player anymore. So if I do throw a turnover or miss a shot, yeah, I'm not happy about it, but I don't overthink everything because of it. And number 2, because I've gotten so many live reps that now decision making to me is light work. So does this mean stop working out? Hell no, of course not. But this means that if this is the root cause, which it may be for your overthinking in a game, you probably gotta go hoop more. Even if it's ones, even if it's a 1v2 or a 2v2 small sided game or playing 3x3, you need live decision making reps and experiment with all those skills that you work on in a workout in these live settings. If you do that, if you begin to take the pressure off yourself and start to focus on what's going on up here emotionally in a game, and you start to find these little keys like I talked about where you're finding space or looking for these advantages, it's gonna change everything for you, I promise. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you would like more on this, again, check out the Mental Skills Academy. I think it would benefit you guys incredibly. If not, you already know where to find me on here. If you got any questions, let me know. I'm on here, I'm on Instagram. You guys are a part of the family, so you're always welcome. As always, appreciate you guys. See you next time.